The key to behavioral change is identity change. You have to first see yourself as the person that you want to become. And a lot of people don't realize that how they're seeing themselves, their self-image, is the blueprint of their entire life. But you can change the blueprint. And in order to do that, you have to. When it comes to speaking with confidence, there's a fascinating study. People who unnecessarily use fancy, complex language are actually perceived as less competent and less intelligent. There's two types of charisma, and we need to know which one we want, and ideally you want to have both. So the first type of charisma is where you see someone at the party and they're telling a story. There's a circle of people around them listening to their every single word. That's captivating charisma. That's only one part of it. A lot of people thrive not through that, but through the magnetic type. We have what's called the trait affective presence, where people will feel something in our presence or when they think about us. So ask yourself, what do I want people to catch? What I always advise people is when you are speaking, you walk to the center of the room, make eye contact with people, scan the room, and then when everyone is quiet and looking at you and anticipating what you're going to say, only then do you speak. You're creating this incredible gravitas without having to do anything. When someone is being condescending, the best response I've ever heard.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode. I'm super excited to introduce you to today's guest, Dr. Shadé. She's a behavioral researcher and award-winning peak performance educator. And her new book, Big Trust, is coming out on the 22nd of January. Amazing. Shadé, thank you so much for taking the time and being here today. And congrats on the new book.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course, super excited and really honored that this is your first in-person podcast. That's amazing. And I know that this conversation is going to be really valuable because I've been watching your videos for about 5 years.
Wow.
They've been popping on my TikTok or Instagram. Like, by the way, Shadé has like millions of followers, like on not only TikTok, but Instagram and LinkedIn as well, which is awesome. So well done.
Thank you. It kind of all happened by accident. Maybe I'll share the story of how it happened, but we'll get there later, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I'm really curious about your book. What motivated you to write it and what is it about?
So the book itself is essentially the science of self-doubt.
Okay.
And what really motivated me to write it is because I've experienced my own challenges with self-doubt, that inner critic, the anxiety that I experienced early in my career. I worked in the legal industry for 4 years, so I'm a lawyer by training, then banking and finance. And I always had this underlying stress, this underlying thought of being found out, feeling like an imposter, never feeling like I belonged. And it's a heavy weight to carry. And the more people I speak to about it, the more they resonate with that. So that was the beginning of the journey about 5-6 years ago. And so what actually came first with some research? So I decided to do a PhD to really understand what is this inner voice that we hear? How is it holding us back? And how is it actually impacting what we do in our lives and our careers? So it was through the research that I came across some fascinating insights that I then poured into this book. And what I think is really fascinating about the book is, okay, so Francesca, if I were to ask you what is the opposite of self-doubt, what comes to mind first?
First thing is self-confidence.
Self-confidence, that's what we immediately go to, doubt
Yeah.
versus confidence.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is when we look at the research and how the brain is wired, confidence is actually the result. It's the output. There's something that comes first that allows you to take action. And this is what all of us get wrong. And this is why we're waiting for the confidence. We're waiting to feel ready before we do the thing. But there's something that comes first because the confidence will come after you start. It builds your self-efficacy. It builds that view that, hey, I can do this. So what comes first is trust in ourselves. We have to trust that we will get up, that we will show up, that we will persevere. So actually, the opposite of self-doubt is self-trust. And then the self-trust allows you to take the action, and the action builds the confidence. So that is what the book is about. It's how to systematically build self-trust, looking at evidence-based practices, strategies, tools to really help us uncover the things that are blocking us back and then move forward with confidence.
That's amazing. And I can't wait to delve into that. That's really fascinating and really helpful for a lot of people. So how would you say, how can someone master their mindset and overcome that inner critic you were talking about?
This is a big question. How do we master our mindset? One of the simplest models that I've come across that I think is so valuable in helping to understand is that, okay, so there's the mind and then there's the brain. And we often conflate the two. We think they're the same thing. And for a very long time, I did too. And I would use the term interchangeably. But what's really helpful is to think of them as two separate things because essentially they are. So the brain is the organ that sits inside our skull. And it becomes activated in response to our environment. It's what triggers our senses. It's what drives our body and our emotions and everything else. The mind is something intangible. It's not the brain, it's something else. It's a sense of consciousness. And so when we're living our lives, if we just allow our brain to take over, it's going to be a physical manifestation of what we're experiencing in our environment. It operates on default, and then our thoughts will just follow suit. But once we realize that actually our mind is separate, we then recognize that through our thoughts, our conscious thoughts, using that mind, we can change our brain patterns. And so something that we hear so often, and you've probably heard this too, is people say, well, I guess this is just how I am. This is just the kind of person I am. And they resign themselves to the fact that they are how they are right now, and they are not open to change. It's the language of a fixed mindset. But what we know is that the brain can change. But how do you change the brain? By using the mind to change your thoughts. Using your mind to change the thinking that goes into what the brain is operating with. And then over time, you're creating new neural pathways. So when it comes to mastering your mindset, it's recognizing that it's mind first, brain comes next. So it's thought first, feeling next. And if you can start to tap into that, mind first, thought first, and then recognize that the brain will catch up, the feeling will catch up, the actions will catch up, that's how we start to master our mindset.
Lovely. Are there any techniques you could give us?
Oh, so many. Okay, so one of them is about becoming aware of what's going on in our mind and in our brain. So, of course, they're separate things, but when we're experiencing a highly negative emotion, let's say stress, let's say anxiety, let's say feelings of inadequacy, what will happen is the part of the brain responsible for protection and fleeing from a threat will become activated. And then our thoughts will just become passengers. And so our thoughts reinforce how we feel. But if we acknowledge actually mind and brain are separate, when we're experiencing those thoughts and those feelings, the first thing we can do is to tell ourselves, okay, my body is responding to my brain and it's telling me to withdraw right now, to slouch, to lean away, to move away. So I'm going to do the opposite. This is called the opposite action technique. It's from dialectical behavior therapy. The idea is that when a behavior is not conducive to what you want in that moment, like I'm about to step on stage, I want to be confident right now, but my body is wanting me to withdraw. I'm feeling really anxious. I'm trying to slouch. You say, no, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to sit with an upright posture. I'm going to raise my head. I'm going to raise my gaze. I'm going to increase the volume of my voice slightly. Speak a little bit slower. So that's one way that we're using the mind to do something differently. And then the brain catches on because there's this feedback loop. So that's one. I'll share just one other, which is about thoughts, reframing the thoughts that we have. So again, knowing that we have mind, we have brain. The thoughts that we have reflect how we feel, reflect what the brain is telling us to feel, but we can change them. The most common negative limiting thoughts are things like, I can't do that. This always happens to me. I'm never going to get better. So it's this language of can't, never, always. Absolutes.
Yeah.
As soon as you catch yourself thinking that, shift into a how. How can I make this work? Or a what? What can I do with what I have? As soon as you consciously catch yourself thinking these things and consciously get yourself to think something differently, you activate the prefrontal cortex in the brain. So rather than the emotion centers, the limbic area, the amygdala, you're forcing blood flow. Because when we talk about activation in the brain, essentially all this means when we're looking at MRIs is blood flow. Blood flow signals activation. So you're getting the blood to flow back into that prefrontal area, which is the part that we need for rationality and logic and, the rational thinking. And that helps us calm ourselves. And then moving to the how and the what puts you into more of a problem-solving state. So 2 little tips. The body, sit upright, do the opposite, and then catch those negative thoughts and just reframe them in the moment.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're
Those are
welcome.
really useful. And I love how research-backed and science-backed everything you said is. So you're a behavioral researcher. What is the key to behavioral change, would you say?
So when we do a lot of work with organizations, when we're working with clients, we hear this desire to change. I want to change. I want to grow. I want to be better. And that requires them to change a lot of their behaviors. But we know that to change a behavior takes a lot of effort. And because these are habitual ways of thinking. I mean, if we look at brain and mind, the mind is saying, yes, I want to change. The brain is saying, no, I'm really happy with the way things were. So the key to behavioral change, I was actually running a session on this recently, and I asked the audience, what do you think the key to behavioural change is? And they threw out answers. Some of them said consistency. Some of them said repetition. And that's part of it, but there's actually something that comes first. The key to behavioural change is identity change. What does that mean? You have to first see yourself as the person that you want to become. You have to allow that vision of you, that image of you, to become something that you identify with. So you see yourself becoming that, which then allows you to align your behaviors behind that. And it's one of the most powerful, mind-blowing concepts, this idea of self-image. How we see ourselves today, and if that is fixed, it limits what we're able to achieve tomorrow, what we're able to achieve in terms of goals, how we show up in environments. And a lot of people don't realize that how they're seeing themselves, their self-image, is the blueprint of their entire life.
Yeah.
But you can change the blueprint. And in order to do that, you have to allow space for the future version of you and be clear on what that is so you can align behind it. So it's really identity change.
I love that. Can you give me a practical example? So let's say, someone wants to further their career in some way. How could they change their behavior their identity in order for their behavior to align with that?
Yeah, so let's say someone is in their career and they feel like they're stuck. They feel like they're not getting recognition. They feel like people are not paying attention to them. And they have a deeply held belief that their voice is not valuable. So every situation that they're showing up in and showing up as themselves in, they're actually reflecting this belief that my voice is not valuable. So in a meeting, if I say something and someone cuts me off, okay, that's a verdict that I don't belong in this meeting. I'm going to just stay quiet. If they're having a conversation with someone and that person checks their phone for a minute, they're going to say, oh, this person doesn't want to be here. This person has better things to do. I'm going to stop speaking. So no matter what they do, anything that they experience confirms that initial belief, even if it had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Like they might send a message to a friend and the friend will read it so they can see that they've read it, and the friend doesn't reply immediately. Oh no, what have I done? They must hate me. My friend has more important things to do. We have these stories in our heads, these they call them confabulations in the research, which is just a completely made up story.
Yeah.
But it comes down to how we see ourselves, our self-image. So what that person would need to do early in their career, or they want to advance, is start to remind themselves, tell themselves, use that mind over brain to say, my voice is valuable. I may not have all the answers. I may not speak as competently as that person or as credibly as them, but I still have value in what I share. My opinion matters, my questions matter, and start to remind themselves of that every time they're going into a meeting, a conversation, anything at all in the work environment, applying for a role. Hey, my opinion matters, my voice matters. And then start to show up as that. And then the more they do that over time, they'll start to internalize that, and then it allows them to align behind the person they want to become.
Amazing.
So that's the idea of identity change.
Amazing. And what are some techniques they could use to start speaking with more confidence?
So this is a big one. When we're in a position where we don't feel like either we belong, we feel like we're being judged, any of these environments, a lot of people have this tendency to revert to habits that are not very helpful. They speak very fast. They don't pause in what they're saying. They might also, and we see this a lot of people will try to use very fancy language, complicated language to sound more credible and sound more intelligent. In fact, I did this early in my career in banking. I adopted all the jargon. I used words that I really didn't need to use, and I felt like I was doing myself a service. There's a fascinating study from Daniel Oppenheimer, and he found that people who unnecessarily use fancy, complex language are actually perceived as less competent and less intelligent than people who just speak simply, easy to be understood, which is so contrary to what we think.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we've experienced it. If you're having a conversation with someone and they're using this unnecessarily complex language and it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable,
Yeah, absolutely.
start to doubt, are they hiding something? Or So when it comes to speaking with confidence, I think it's so important. There's two elements. The first one is how you're perceived. So it's the basic things like, if you're nervous, speak a little bit slower than you might normally. Make sure you're applying pauses to give your audience time to absorb what you've just shared. Also, physical. People are making judgments based on your physical appearance. Are you sitting upright? Are you making eye contact? Are you present with someone? Or are you looking around the room and darting and using a lot of hand gestures? All of these reflect a lack of confidence. So tune into the physicality. Breath is also really important. But I have a second piece to this. Francesca, have you ever been around someone and they're doing everything right? They're speaking with pauses and they're making eye contact and they look confident, but there's something about them that feels a little bit off.
Yeah,
like you're not sure you trust them.
Yeah.
This can happen when we know the tricks and the techniques, but deep down we still don't believe that we belong. We still don't believe that our voice matters. And so we're doing all the things that we learned in the course that we did or the social media tips, but deep down we haven't updated our self-image. The blueprint is still running on old hardware. And so you're going to be hyper attuned to, what are people thinking of me right now? What did that person's face just mean about we become obsessive. And people can sense that. So that's why these two elements. So to appear more confident and credible, firstly, you need to tap into that sense of, I have a voice, I want to use it. People are going to gain something valuable from my presence. And then you marry that with everything else that they're hearing and they're seeing.
Yeah, amazing. I love that you talk about the outside things, the external things you could do as in the body language or the voice, but also the internal state is so important, if not the most important. Is, sure, if you stay upright, you'll sound or look more confident. But if someone is truly confident, maybe they could be sitting in any position and still that internal energy of confidence and self-trust is so important. So I love that you marry the two. I've also heard you talk about the Humanness courage matrix in one of your videos. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, this is one of our favorite matrix that we will share with organizations that we work with. So what we were seeing when we were spending countless hours with these companies, with these leaders, with these teams, and a lot of it was observation. So we would often sit in meetings and just observe how people interact, or sit in one-on-ones and just be in the office. And what we were picking up on is that there are distinct cultures within these different teams, and it was based on two different dimensions. So, okay, if I were to ask you, Francesca, if you're in a workplace and you really enjoy going to work, you like the people you work with, what's the human element, the humanness dimension? Like, what are some of the qualities that you might expect to see in a culture like that?
Probably warmth, friendliness, openness, safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's all of those human connection pieces.
Yeah.
Are people paying attention to you when you speak? Do they check in with you? Are they kind? Are they considerate?
Yeah.
And then there's also another dimension, though, as well. If you want to be in a high-performing team or environment or company, what are things that you often see in those environments?
Things like maybe a bit of competition, a bit like, really focused on their goals, risk-taking.
Yes, exactly. So we call this the courage dimension, which is what drives high performance. It's where people are not afraid of giving feedback to each other because they want to see each other improve, where leaders are very clear on giving the directives of what needs to be done and how. And so, so we need these two. What we saw in some teams is that sometimes they'd be imbalanced. So we were working with some teams and they had a lot of potential, but they were underperforming. And we often found it was because of one of two reasons. Either their warmth dimension, their humanness dimension was so high, they loved coming to work. They loved each other. They would go out and have lunches together and stay after work and have dinners. Really enjoyed each other. Kind, considerate.
Yeah.
But there was no one guiding the ship. They had no performance metrics that they were told to follow. They were prioritizing people over everything else. No one was giving feedback. So it was a people-pleasing environment.
Yeah.
No one wanted to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help when it comes to achieving goals, and especially in companies. The alternative was that we had some teams who were so high on their courage dimension, they were all about the performance and driving it and giving feedback, but morale was so low because no one was speaking kindly to each other.
Yeah.
There was a lot of blame. There was a lot of toxicity. It was not helpful at all. So the ideal state is actually getting a balance of these two, where we have high humanness, high courage, which means you go to work, you enjoy it. As a leader, you're cultivating an environment where people feel heard and valued, there's consideration, and at the same time, you're able to give feedback. You're able to bring them back to what needs to be done. You're revisiting the performance goals and the metrics and the KPIs. And that balance is so important for high performance and happiness.
That's so interesting. And I'm really curious, when companies come to you to help them, what is the most common problems they have?
Change. How do we manage change? We're going through a lot of change and disruption, and we have a lot of resistance from our leaders and from their teams. How do we navigate this? Especially now with the advent of AI, and everyone's a bit afraid and not really sure what it means for them. And they're trying really hard to adopt these practices really quickly without fully understanding the impact that it's meant to have and that it should be having. And so there's a lot of confusion. So when we think about change, and we think of brain and mind. So the brain is a prediction machine. It loves certainty. When we think about our ancestors, it was more important for them to be able to predict whether things would happen as they would happen and to identify when something was going wrong so that they could respond to it with fight or flight, because it was a survival mechanism. It was a survival benefit. Today, when something is different to what we expect, like a change, like AI, like new processes, we interpret it the same way. The brain goes into protective mode. We go into fight or flight. We're also familiar with this. We've heard it a million times. And this is happening on a mass scale in companies. And why it's so important in companies is because one negative person, one negative complainer infiltrates and then starts to, they start to rally together, and then people bond through their negativity, and then they complain together, and then they start blaming, and it can become very, very damaging very, very quickly.
So what's the solution to that?
What is the solution? So the very first step is to understand from the leaders what is the biggest challenge. And often what we hear, the biggest challenge is a lack of transparency. So you'll have decisions being made at the topmost leadership level. And then they will tell leaders, and then leaders have to go and tell their teams. But they're missing some very clear whys. Like, why are we doing this? What is the benefit? And how is this going to impact your role? And so by the time it trickles down to various levels, the ones that are, the mass employees or team members are just being told to do something, and the why hasn't come with it. The other thing that often happens is a lot of the time leaders think that they need to have all the answers. So they will share what they know and then not share what they don't know. But it's often what they don't know that is on people's minds. But what about this? But what about that? And no one's addressing it. And no one has the courage to ask about it. So what we encourage leaders to do is actually be very, very transparent. Here is what we know. And here is what we don't know. But here's what we're doing to find out. And that way you give people a sense of psychological safety, not in terms of feeling like they can share without interpersonal fear, but the safety of, okay, I feel like I'm protected here. I'm part of this tribe. We're all in this together. So, and I think that comes down to so many things. Like even when we look at how we respond to change in our own lives, a lot of the time we think that we need to have all the answers before we start anything. And then we hold back because we never feel confident, we never feel ready, because we're not relying on the trust. When we rely on the trust, what that allows us to do is say, okay, I trust that no matter what happens, I will be okay. I can rely on skills that I've developed, on resources that I know I have, on people I can reach out to. And here is what I don't know about what could happen. And here's what I'm going to do if these things happen. So this is called a pre-mortem in the project management world, or inversion thinking, where you think, okay, here are all the things that could happen that are out of my control. I don't know what's going to happen in this space. But for each of them, and often they're worst case scenarios because that's what our brain does, for every single one of them, what you want to do is think, okay, if that terrible thing happens, what would my response be? How will I address it? And once you go through that process, you suddenly realize, okay, none of it is going to cause the end of the world. I have things that I can do if any of that happens. And then if it happens, you already have your action plan because you've mapped it out when you were more clear in your head, because you weren't dealing with the stress of it happening. So this is a really valuable, in fact, I'm going to share a little story. Completely unrelated to the workplace, but I love it. It's actually in the book. So Michael Phelps is known as being one of the greatest swimmers of all time. He was a multiple Olympic world record holder, phenomenal. Now his coach said that he had a really interesting habit where he would visualize. Now visualization is not super interesting because a lot of athletes do it, a lot of us do it, but what his coach said was that it wasn't just the visualization of things going well. He would actually visualize everything that could go wrong, all of the unexpected things that could happen. Like if he slipped off the starting block, if his goggles filled up with water, if he got a cramp in the middle of a race. And then he would mentally process what would happen or what would I do in those situations. And then he would visualize him doing that. So he was building into his nervous system a plan B if something didn't work. So that if it happened, he didn't have to think about it. He didn't have to get distracted. He would just divert to his plan.
That's amazing.
And then where it came to light in 2008, it's the finals of I think it's the 200-meter butterfly. He dives in. Within about 15 meters, his goggles fill up with water. He cannot see anything.
Oh my God.
But instead of stressing, instead of getting distracted, he just relied on his training, his mental visualization. And as he says, he swam blind for 175 meters and broke a world record.
Wow.
So I got goosebumps sharing that story because it
Yeah.
just shows the value of these things. You know, we talk about these strategies and these tools all the time. And it's only when you hear something like that that you realize, wow, okay, there is a huge amount of value in taking the time to determine what are all the things that would go wrong, what would happen if that went wrong, what would I do? And then you visualize yourself getting out of that. And it's also called an implementation intention. Have you read James Clear's Atomic Habits?
Yes.
Oh,
love
brilliant
that
book.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. What it does is distill decades worth of research in goal setting, goal attainment, motivational science, and just makes it so easy to understand. And so one of the concepts he shares, which comes from Peter Gollwitzer's work, is that an implementation intention is where we say, if this happens, then I will. If then. So Michael Phelps was, if my goggles fill up with water, then I will rely on my breathing, my rhythm, my this, my that, and I'll do it. And that's something we can take.
Yeah.
If I get on this stage and I forget my lines, then I will walk over to my cup of water, take a sip, have a quick look at my notes, and come back on stage.
Yeah.
So that in the moment, if that happens, you're not left with stage fright, frozen in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
You've rehearsed it. That's okay. I'm going to smile, walk over, get my things, come back. And it's just so incredibly valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny you give that example because I had such a similar situation.
Oh, you did?
When I was doing public speaking courses, my biggest fear, as I guess anyone has, is like just forgetting everything. And, when I had that fear, I was thinking, okay, maybe what's the worst thing that could happen? Exactly. Like what am I going to do? Like if that happens? And I was like, I might just smile and say, sorry, I forgot. I need to read the lines. And, and then that thing happened.
Oh, it did?
And it did actually happen.
Wow.
I was presenting and I just blanked, like I forgot everything. And I just said like, sorry, I forgot all my lines, like kind of made a joke about it and then went on, read the next paragraph that I was meant to say and then went back and presented and nothing happened,
No, exactly.
And people were so understanding as well, of course. No one judged me.
No.
They were so supportive. And ever since then, I've felt so much more comfortable with public speaking. Also because my worst fear happened.
Yeah.
And it was like...
So it's like it's only up from here.
Yeah, it's like, well... it's not that bad. And then also because I had that plan B, as you say. So that's super valuable. I love that.
Well done. I love that you had it. It happened and you handled it with grace. In fact, there was a study, it's many decades old now, but it came out of the University of Texas. And they found that if you are competent, so you were on stage, you were obviously speaking with competence, credibility, and then you make an error, you make a mistake, or something goes wrong. People actually like you more.
The pratfall effect.
Yes,
right?
exactly. But you have to be competent to start with.
Yeah.
Because if you got up there and you were already forgetting your lines and then you were a mess and then it wouldn't go so well.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of comfort that comes from knowing that, you don't have to be perfect all the time. And so, like I always tell people ask me, are you nervous before you speak on stages? I spoke in front of an audience of 10,000 back in February.
Wow.
The biggest audience I'd ever spoken in front of.
Oh my God.
And they said, are you nervous? And I said, of course we get nervous. That's our body telling us that we care. The only hope that I have is that my brain and my mind are working together when I'm on that stage.
Yeah.
Because I have experienced being on a stage and like my brain was on because I could feel the energy, but my mind was somewhere else. And I'm like, I don't remember what comes next. And so I was relying on my notes and trying to engage with the audience. Doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
But it's just knowing that, okay, that's my greatest fear. My mind is on holiday, which happened. And it's, again, what are we going to do in that situation? How do we deal with it? And you realize it's okay.
You can handle it.
You can handle
You'll
it.
be okay.
Exactly.
Amazing. I love that. And just talking about that
Humanness, courage.
humanness, courage, or like worms competence. I think they're
Yes, very
quite similar. Yeah. Are there some techniques for someone to increase their personal magnetism?
Yes. So we all want to be more magnetic. We want to be more charismatic because we know what it's like when we speak to somebody and they're this way. They just draw you in. I was thinking about this recently in terms of how do you describe or help someone else become more magnetic and more charismatic. And I realized there's actually two types of charisma. There's two types of charisma, and we need to know which one we want, and ideally you want to have both. So the first type of charisma is where you see someone, let's say on a stage, and they are so captivating. You cannot take your eyes off them. They are engaging. They're commanding that stage. That's captivating charisma. Or someone at the party, and they're telling a story, and you are, there's a circle of people around them listening to their every single word. That is captivating charisma. But then have you ever heard someone at a party sharing a story or seeing them on stage, and then their keynote ends or their story ends, and then you actually have no desire to go and speak to them afterwards?
Yeah.
You're like, that was great, but cool. You do you. It's because they're not magnetic. They don't have magnetic charisma. And I think this is a really important distinction because sometimes we think that charisma is the center of attention, the captivation on stage. That's only one part of it. A lot of people thrive not through that, but through the magnetic type. And the magnetic type. So I'll share a little story. I was at a cafe recently and there was a girl coming in and she just had this huge smile on her face. I took out my earphones and I said to her, "You have the most radiant smile." Aww. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, thank you." And, and then she went off and had her meal. Anyway, and then I just got back to my work. And then as she was leaving about 2 hours later, she came to say goodbye to me. Oh. She's like, "I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great day."
That's so sweet.
And it's very sweet. I'm also that kind of person. I like to tell people when I notice something that's radiant about them. But I was reflecting on this because it was when I was thinking about this charisma, these two levels of charisma. And I thought, how interesting. She had the kind of magnetic charisma that made me want to speak to her. And then because I spoke to her, I created the kind of magnetic charisma that made her want to come and say goodbye.
Yeah.
That is how simple it is.
Wow.
When you are genuinely with people, when you acknowledge their qualities, whether it's a radiant smile, whether it's their consideration. So one element is actually acknowledging the positive qualities in others. That makes you magnetic more sincerely. But it's also in how you show up. Are you present with people? Like Francesca, if I were here and like every now and then I was just checking my phone, how would you feel?
I wouldn't feel good.
No, you'd feel like you're not my main priority.
Yeah.
And it's because you're not.
Yeah.
And so little things that we do signal to the other person, even if you are my main priority and there was something urgent I was dealing with, you don't know that.
Yeah.
And so we need to be so aware of what we're conveying, not what we intend to convey. They're two different things.
Yeah.
So smiling, being present with people, making eye contact, being with them. I recently had an interaction with someone who is incredibly successful in business, remarkably successful. And when you're in their presence, they have a very frantic energy. Very frantic energy. And they're obviously very high functioning, but it's so frantic that you actually don't want to be around it because you feel like you're an inconvenience. You feel like they have other places to be and people to be talking to.
Yeah.
And so it's actually remarkable this person has done so well in business and yet doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of think, who do I want to be? How do I want people to feel around me?
Yeah.
What kind of brand do I want? But simply, if I had to say 5 things, smile. Be more expressive with your face. Be present with people. Put the phone away. Make the eye contact. Be with them. Acknowledge people's positive qualities. We don't do this enough because we often think that, I don't need to share it. A compliment's not going to mean anything to that person. But what studies have found is that they mean so much more than we expect. And also, we often don't share compliments because we would feel cringy if someone shared it with us. But when you're acknowledging a quality, it's different. That sticks with somebody. They'll reflect on it. The fourth one would be, in terms of magnetism, we all know what it's like to be with someone who is incredibly negative and complains and is resentful.
Yeah.
It repels you.
Yeah.
Unless you're that way yourself, in which case it's like a magnet.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of magnet we want to be,
Yeah.
right? So try your very best not to complain around other people. not to vent around other people. I understand there's value in venting, it's emotional release, but you want to be really careful who you're releasing to. So that's a big one. And then the fifth one would be, again, it's linked to the one before. Have you ever been around someone, Francesca, or anyone who's tuning in right now, and you're around them and you just feel so energized by their presence?
Yeah.
And then you leave and you're still feeling energized?
Yeah.
There's just this energy that they have. It's completely unspoken, this like vibration they have. And then similarly, you've been around someone, they may not be complaining, but there's a heaviness, a seriousness, a negativity, and then you leave and you carry that with you as well.
Feels draining.
Completely draining. We call them negative energy vampires. They're sucking the energy out of a room. We have that effect on everybody in the sense that we have what's called a trait affective presence, where people will feel something in our presence or when they think about us. Affective referring to emotional state. And then also emotions are contagious.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, are my emotions worth catching right now? And what do I want people to catch? And then lead with that in every single interaction. That's how you become truly magnetic.
Amazing. I love that. That's super valuable. And what about becoming a more charismatic presenter?
Ooh, okay.
If you're on stage, for
Yes.
instance.
So this is going into that captivating charisma.
Yeah.
So something a lot of people do, especially when they're nervous or anxious or don't feel like they belong or they're struggling with that self-image that says my voice is not valuable, is they will speak really fast. They will rush through what they're saying. But also, I see this a lot in workplaces or on stages with speakers who are not as experienced. As soon as they're introduced and as people are either shuffling their papers or in the middle of clapping, they'll come out and speak. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. You've just lost a prime opportunity to set the scene. So when you watch a TED Talk, what you will consistently see is that there is someone standing in a red circle. They will be introduced. There's an audience clapping. The audience applause will die down. And then about a second later, that's when the person will speak.
Yeah.
And it's not a, hi, everyone, thank you so much for being here. They go straight into something, a question, a story, something to capture the audience. So what I always advise people is when you are speaking, walk to the center of this is if it's a stage situation. You walk to the center of the room, have a warm look on your face, because if you don't, it will look like you've forgotten what you're saying.
Yeah.
So again, we have to be aware of our expressions. You walk to the center of the room, have that warm look on your face, make eye contact with people, scan the room. And then when everyone is quiet and looking at you and anticipating what you're going to say, only then do you speak. You're creating this incredible gravitas without having to do anything. Literally, you're not doing anything. That's the aim.
Yeah.
Don't do anything. And then you speak. It also allows you to ground your feet. It's how you captivate, how you bring them in. And because people are judging whether they should listen to you, whether this person has credibility, whether I trust this person before you say a word.
Yeah.
So own that opportunity, own that space, walk into stage, don't rush, be present, create that magic pause.
And what's the mindset behind that? Like, what should you be thinking to give you that magnetic presence and confidence?
I love that question. So in order to have that magnetism, I always like to think, how do I make this not about me? Because self-doubt thrives because of the self part. I, me, mine. So interestingly, there's a difference between self-doubt and doubt, right? I doubt whether this train is going to get me there on time.
Okay, yeah.
Right? As opposed to, I have doubt in myself that I will be able to do this thing.
Yeah.
So it's because of the I, me, my. We become very self-centered when we're experiencing self-doubt because we're trying to protect ourselves. We are the center of our universe just because of how we're wired. So if we can shift that focus outside of us, how can I be of value right now? How can I give this audience something that they may not have had before? How can I help them in some small way? And this applies not only on stage, this also applies in an interview.
Yeah.
How can I show this recruiting manager, this hiring manager, that I'm going to be able to add the most value to this role in this company?
Yeah.
On a date, instead of trying to be interesting, how can I make this person feel like they are the most interesting person in the world?
Yeah.
How can I, with kids, kids are probably not the right example to be using, but we can find a way to be of service. I mean, of course, you want to be thinking, how can I be of service to my family, my kids? But it's such an incredible reframe because we move from a very internal lens. How do they see me? How are they judging me? How am I coming across? 2, how can I be of value to them? And it's a incredibly valuable perspective change because it becomes what's called a self-transcendent state, where we're no longer in ourselves. We are now above ourselves, making it about something bigger. So that would be my guidance. I know it's easier said than done, but if you could ask yourself before any interaction, any meeting, any interview, how can I offer something to this audience, to this person, to this hiring manager, to this group of people who are with me right now?
I love that mindset reframe. I'm definitely going to be using it because I have a speaking event coming soon.
Great.
So I'll definitely use those tips. But you mentioned, in an interview context as well. And I was curious, are there any other things you could do to make the interviewer like you or to impress an interviewer?
Ooh, yes. Okay, so if we go to the humanness courage dimension, so this is actually based on research, which is the trust and assertiveness matrix. So we want to be demonstrating that they can trust us. And how we do that is very early on, the eye contact, the warmth, shake hands, be present, be aware of what's on your face. Sometimes when we're nervous, everything drops because we're in, deer in headlights mode trying to protect ourselves. Allow your face to soften, take some breaths. But when it comes to actually interview situations, one thing that's really important is to remind yourself that they're not just interviewing you, you are interviewing them. Because if they get you, if they offer you a role and they get you in their company, they're benefiting too. It's not just you who gets a paycheck and gets a role. They're getting your time, your energy, your skills, your investment. So you need to see it as, I have value to offer too. And I need to make sure that I want to work with your company.
Absolutely.
So that's a really valuable also reframe because again, it's not just, I like to think of things as, what is the status in this interaction? The status difference. And if you go into an interview with desperation, your status drops and theirs increases. And you feel desperate. Please give me this job. If you go into an interview and you say, hey, I want to see if you are the type of company I want to work for too, you've suddenly leveled the playing field. And that can change how you feel. The other thing which is important is just basic behavior, posture, body language. So again, if you feel like withdrawing, sit upright. Often what happens is when we have a backing on a chair, we'll lean into it. And then we kind of slouch. So if you do that, don't sit right up to the back of the chair. Sit a little bit forward. So you look like you're really engaged. That's a really valuable tip, especially on virtual interviews, virtual workshops. Sometimes when you sit back, even if you're leaning back, you give an impression of being highly relaxed. And if you slightly lean forward, you give this impression of highly engaged. Very subtle, but it makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
And then you want to be prepared in your interview. You want to practice, know what you're going to say. That doesn't mean memorize your responses, but essentially you want to be so clear on how your skill sets match everything in their job description so that no matter what they ask, you know how to respond. Now, what happens, Francesca, if you're applying for a role and you don't have the skills? I had an experience like this and I will share it because I actually had forgotten about it until recently. I think it's worth sharing. When I worked in banking, in my last few years, I needed a new role, I needed a new opportunity, and I applied for a role which was an innovation strategy role in a team I'd never been in. Now, I had no strategy experience at the time. I had no innovation experience at the time. It was a highly technical role. Somehow I managed to make it to the final 2. Because in the interviews, what I did is I went in there with full confidence. I was very open about what I could do. I brought the energy. Now, when we got to the final stage interview, there were 2 people left. I went in there and I sat with the MD, who was going to be the person I'd be reporting to. And he said to me, look, Shadé, we're really impressed with your background, your skills, your energy for this role. But the truth is, he said, the truth is you don't necessarily have the experience. And rather than saying, you're right, maybe I'm not the right fit, I said, you're right, and I see that as a benefit. Let me show you why. And I shared with him that even though I don't have direct experience, that would give me a unique insight because I'll be asking questions that no one in that team would, because that's just how things have always been done. I wouldn't shy away from questions. I would also bring best practice from other parts of the business into that. I also shared that, look, I may not have direct experience, but my entire background demonstrates that I'm able to learn things extremely quickly, pick up and hit the ground running, create innovative projects. So I brought in all the other things that I'd done and the skills and the qualities especially. So the growth mindset, the attention to detail, the desire to do things differently, the curiosity. And I left them front of mind for him. So that by the time we got to the end of the interview, he said, I came into this prepared to tell you that you are not the right fit
Yeah.
and that we're going to offer it to the other guy. But you have just completely changed my mind.
Wow.
Wild.
That's amazing.
And then I withdrew because I ended up getting a job elsewhere. So I never actually pursued it. But this is an example of how if my self-image was one where I said, I don't have a voice, my voice is not valuable, I don't have skills, I'm not of value here, I'm not going to be able to do the job.
Yeah.
I would be limiting it. And then I would show up in that interview and probably have accepted, oh, you don't have all the experience. No, you're right. Look, I really thank you for your the opportunity anyway, and I hope everything goes well. And then left, and the interview would have been done in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But I made a conscious choice.
Yeah.
So really important, before you go into anywhere, what are you telling yourself? What is your mind reinforcing for your brain? And what's the new story you want to be telling? Use your mind to change the story and do it. One other thing which is worthwhile mentioning, which you might have been thinking about asking next, is questions. Do we ask questions at the end of the interview?
Yeah.
I always used to think, get to the end of the interview and say, no, I have no questions. You've given me everything I needed. And then I learned that's probably not the best way, because the end of the interview, so there's something called the peak end rule.
Yeah.
We often think that a first impression is the most important thing. And it is, except when you're in an interview situation where they often go for 30 to 60 minutes, it's not just about the first impression.
Yeah.
It's also about the peak moment within that conversation. So maybe there was a moment when you all laughed or you had a really fascinating story, but also the end. We tend to remember what happens at the peak moment and the end, often more than a first impression. So the end is your opportunity to really reinstill who you are and why you need the role.
Yeah.
And so asking questions is a great way to do this.
Amazing. What should you ask?
What should you ask? So you want to have done some research. You don't want to ask basic questions. You don't want to ask anything that might make you seem like you're not the right fit. You want to have done a little bit of research about the company, the team, the projects they've delivered. Don't try and catch the interviewers out. Don't try and ask something so hard that they're not going to be able to answer it. But it could even be, so Francesca, how long have you been in the company and what has kept you here? Something like this, if you want to get to know the person.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will ask things like, what are the opportunities for growth in this team? You want to be cautious about when you ask that, because sometimes if you appear too eager for growth too quickly, they might think, oh, we're going to bring her in, and then in 6 months she's going to try and leave into a different role.
Yeah.
Or, she wants that growth. Maybe it's not the right, place for her. It's a flight risk. So again, it entirely depends on the nature of the role you're going into, the relationship with them, but have a few questions up your sleeve. Now, there's a controversial end question, which I have shared before on social media, but then some people were saying, oh, it's risky. If you feel like the interview went really, really well, you can ask this one question. So and this is only if you genuinely believe that you can do the role, because there are a lot of times when you will be in an interview and you're not really sure, but that's okay. You're never going to know unless you try. Yeah. But this is if you are convinced that I am the right person for this, I'm going to add the most value. Yeah. You ask them, is there anything that has come up in this interview or in my CV, my resume, that makes you think that I'm perhaps not the ideal candidate for this role? So you're planting seeds. Is there anything that makes me, or rather you're saying, me, ideal candidate. So you're combining these in their minds. Yeah. And then allowing them time to basically raise something, a concern that they might have, which means you can then address it. They might say, well, this role is heavy on the data analysis and it doesn't seem like you've had any experience there. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I haven't had direct experience in data analysis. But in my very first role, I was exposed to, I shadowed such and such. I did a little bit of work here. And also I'm an extremely fast learner. One thing I would commit to doing, if that's a requirement for this role, is I'll do a weekend course or I'll do a short course through this university to make sure that I have the basics. So when I come, I can get started.
Amazing.
Right? You're identifying what are the caution areas they have. How are you going to fill it? Yeah. The risk, though, is if you're not sure that you are the right person, you say, are there any concerns you have? And then they come up with all these concerns and then you've just sabotaged, because now they're going to be left with, okay, they're not the right person because of this. So you need to be cautious about that one, but it can be really effective.
I like the question.
I think it's good, especially if you're more senior. If you're more of a senior leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the question where they ask about your strengths and weaknesses?
Ooh. A lot of people think that when they're asking about your weaknesses, you need to share a strength that's actually a weakness, or a weakness that's actually
perfectionist.
I care too much about my work. Don't do that. Firstly, it's outdated. If we're on the interviewing side, we know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And actually being a perfectionist is not even a good weakness to be sharing, because it also means that you're going to be blocking things. You're not, The formula to follow, what they want to hear you say is that you have the intellectual humility to know where your gaps are. So when it comes to your weaknesses, you need to demonstrate that I'm fully aware that there are things that I'm not so good at, but here is what I'm doing about them, and here's the impact that that's already had. So you're demonstrating to them that, hey, I have a growth mindset, I'm willing to evolve and learn, and I've already started. So one example would be, my greatest weakness is that I get extremely nervous when presenting, and it hinders my ability to be understood, whether it's in team meetings, whether it's department updates. I identified that with my manager in the last quarterly update. And so we have a plan together. I've already done a program outside of work. I'm also involved in a program through work. And my manager and 2 teammates actually mentioned just last month that they've already seen the impact. And I'm committed to continue to improve that.
Amazing.
You see how you've just taken something that could have been a real negative, a weakness, identified, yes, I do get really nervous, but I'm working on it and it's already had a tangible impact. So you need to prepare these beforehand. Of course, don't lie. It needs to be something that is true, but know what you're going to say beforehand, because on the spot, it can be difficult to think of what is the thing I want to share.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And it makes you seem so insightful as well, and emotionally intelligent, which is such a desirable quality. Oh, I love this. This is so fun. What about if you want to give someone feedback at work? What is the best way to do it?
So feedback at work can be tricky, because a lot of people, like if I say to you, Francesca, can I give you some feedback? How do you feel when you hear the word?
Oh, what are you going to say?
Exactly. Instant negative, visceral reaction.
Yeah.
Because we take feedback as an attack on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, vast majority of us, our sense of self is intertwined with our work.
Yeah.
And so if someone is critiquing our work, we feel like they are critiquing us.
Yeah. Our inherent value.
Exactly.
And worth.
Exactly. Which is like a whole other thing we need to separate. You are not your work. That is just an output, and you can change it.
Yeah.
Anyhow, when it comes to giving feedback, you want to frame it from the perspective of building self-efficacy first. So when someone gives feedback, they will often focus purely on what's not going well. This is not good and this needs to be better. And look, for some people, that's all they need.
Yeah.
Because they have a stronger sense of self-esteem.
Yeah.
It doesn't cut them, it doesn't affect them internally. But for a lot of people, they really struggle with that.
Yeah.
So what do? Some people say, do the sandwich approach. Here's what's good. Here's what's bad. Here's what's good. It doesn't work, because they forget about the middle bit.
Yeah.
So, but I do like to start with something that is working well, or acknowledging a quality the person has. Hey, I want to acknowledge that you're always so patient in those client meetings, and it really shines through, and the clients appreciate it too.
Yeah.
So it's not work, it's about them.
Yeah.
It helps build them up, not like the project you did was fantastic. Make it about them. When they're feeling good about themselves, their self-efficacy is increased, then you say, here is something that would make you more effective at your role. That's how you frame, not here is what's wrong, here's what needs to be better, here is what would help you be more effective at what you need to do.
Yeah.
Here is what would take your performance to the next level.
Yeah.
And then you've framed it, tell them what it is. Don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
But you need to give them evidence. You can't just say, you need to be more of a team player.
Yeah.
What, when, why, how? Give me an example. On this date, or what I observed here is that this happened, you said this, they said that. Here was my observation, here's what could be done differently. Or you can even ask them, what was your take? What was happening for you in that moment?
Yeah.
So 2 things that I also encourage when you're giving feedback to someone. Feedback itself, when we talk about this status thing, feedback is someone giving you directive. Naturally, it does lower your sense of status. So when you're the feedback giver, allow that person to reclaim some autonomy and say, hey, I've got some observations I'd like to share with you. Don't use the word feedback. Just throw it out. Terrible word. I have some observations I'd like to share with you about how you can improve this, or what would make you better. When is a good time for me to share that? Allow them to tell you. They might have just had the worst day of their lives. And if you come and drop feedback on them, it's going to be the end for them. Maybe now is a good time. Maybe tomorrow during the meeting. Allow them to tell you when is a good time. It also allows them to mentally prepare for it.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Then when you're giving the feedback, ask for their input. Now, sometimes when you ask for their input, like let's say the teamwork, right? So on this date, this happened, you did that.
Yeah.
You can say, this is what it looked like for me. From an observer, this is what it appeared like. What was going on for you?
Yeah.
And the person might say, I had no idea. That's not what I meant at all. You can say, thank you for sharing that. It's great to know that that wasn't your intent. I think it's also important to know that intention and how it comes across to others are different.
Yeah.
And so how that was being perceived is this.
Yeah.
So how about we align your intent with how it's perceived?
Yeah.
This is what it could look like. What do you think? Okay, great. And that way you're bringing them into the conversation. Okay, now if you're on the receiving end of feedback, you need to make sure that because your status is lower, you don't allow that to undermine your self-confidence, your self-worth, your self-efficacy, and then feel terrible about it.
Yeah.
So what do? Take ownership of the conversation. Firstly, by telling them, if they come to you and say, when is a good time, you tell them with clarity, I'd like to have it here. Great. Then when you have the meeting, be open to it. Mm-hmm. Can you share with me what happened? They will share it. Then ask them, are there any other examples you can think of when this has happened? Mm-hmm. Right? You're showing that you're not defensive. You are open. You haven't agreed with them, but you're saying, is there anything else you can think of? Next step would be, thank you for sharing that with me. I wasn't aware of that. Mm-hmm. Or I appreciate it. Again, you're not acknowledging or agreeing. You're just, I'm open to it. Then you go, how about I do this? You come up with a little bit of an action plan.
Yeah.
Next time we're in a meeting, I'm going to do X and Y. And then maybe we can debrief and you can let me know how it was perceived.
Yeah.
So take ownership. Don't let them tell you what to do. What do you do, though, if the feedback is something you disagree with?
Yeah.
Or it's unsolicited advice from a colleague. You didn't ask for it. They just came and told you, oh, you shouldn't spend so long on preparation. Thanks. Really tricky. So what can help is to have a one-liner that you come back with. I like to acknowledge, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing that with me or caring enough to mention that. Again, you're not agreeing, you're just acknowledging. I like to do things this way because of X, but I'll consider that for future. Appreciate it. See how you haven't allowed, that person has tried to, sometimes it comes from a good place. I'm talking mainly from the times when it's repeated and you know it's not from a good place.
Yeah.
The status is dropping, you're down here, they're here. You don't want to keep your stuff down here. So you say things, you take ownership of the situation to come back up. What about if it's a loved one? If it's a family member who keeps giving you unsolicited feedback and it's making you, they can be the tough ones. What do you say? Thank you for sharing that. Right now, what I really need is support. Mm-hmm. Is that something you're able to provide? Mm-hmm. Tell them what you need. Yeah. Again, tone matters. Say, thanks for sharing that. Right now, what I need is support. Not going to go down so well. Mm-hmm. Right now, what I really need is a listening ear or someone to just be with me. Yeah. Is that something you can do?
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Someone that I know also does this thing where before we talk, she says, I just want to be listened to right now.
Beautiful.
Which is amazing.
That's amazing.
So, by the way, I don't want any advice. I just want someone to hear me
out. So she has a huge amount of emotional intelligence to know that that's what she needs.
Yeah.
And something that I like to share as well is if you're coming to someone and you know they need help, you can ask them. We call it the LPB question.
Yeah.
So sometimes someone might ask us for help, but you don't know what kind of help they need. Yeah. So the LPB, do you need a listening ear? That's for L. P is a problem solver or brainstorm partner. You tell me, what do you need? What's going to help you most right now? Listening ear, problem solver, brainstorm partner. And someone once said, but if I'm in that state, I'm not even going to be able to think through that question to know what I need. Yeah. In which case, okay, you need a listening ear.
Yeah.
I'm going to be that for you right now.
Amazing. I love that. And, we're talking about feedback and, for instance, a colleague telling you like what they think. So what if someone is being condescending to you? What's the best response to that?
So the best response that I've ever heard, and I will be honest, I struggle with people who are being condescending to me because I am very much high on the humanness dimension when we're talking about this, extremely high. And I need to elevate my assertiveness, my courage.
Yeah.
When someone is being condescending, the best response I've ever heard actually comes from Jefferson Fisher's book. He's a trial attorney, multiple New York Times bestselling author for his book, The Next Conversation. And he has this fantastic one-liner. When someone's being condescending, first pause. Don't immediately jump into it, pause. Mm-hmm. And then ask, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat it? Ask them to say it again. Sometimes just that is enough for them to repeat it in their heads and think, okay, I'm not going to say that again, especially if there are other people listening.
Yeah.
Now, if they do say it again, then you can ask them another question, a clarifying question. What did you mean by that? Or was that intended to be helpful or hurtful? Put it on them. Absolutely put it on them.
Yeah.
And then, regardless of what they say, you've just protected yourself
Yeah.
from a harsh criticism to them, from reacting in a negative, defensive way.
Yeah.
You've protected your energy.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to do, but it's very, very important.
And you're not really responding to the insult or the
Exactly.
condescending thing they said. You're talking about how they spoke to you, or,
Yes.
like you're putting the thing back on them,
Exactly.
the responsibility
Yes.
and the,
I like
love
to
that.
think of it as like a spotlight. When
Yeah.
someone is speaking to you in a condescending way or critical way, it's like they're shifting a spotlight to you.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, all eyes are on me. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
When you shift the spotlight back to them by asking a question, suddenly they're the ones in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And it helps you feel like a greater sense of control.
Yeah.
There's also another thing. So let's say someone hasn't necessarily said something condescending,
Yeah.
but you're not really sure what they meant by it. And it could be condescending and you don't know. I like to use one of 4 magic phrases that we've shared many times with our students and our audiences. You start with, that's interesting. That's interesting. Because that's interesting is such a generic term.
Yeah.
The word interesting, it doesn't really mean
It
much.
doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
You're just acknowledging like, okay, that's interesting. And then one of 4 responses, tell me more. What made you say that? What made you do that? What made you think that?
Yeah.
Right? So it's what's.
Yeah.
And when you ask it, you need to ask it with genuine curiosity in your tone. But notice how they're what's and not the other word that we often use. What's the other word we often use?
Why?
Why? Why did you say that? Why did you do that? And when we get asked a why question, like, Francesca, why is your book on your lap? Right? How do you feel when I say that?
Like what, interrogative.
Exactly,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
It feels like you're being like, why are you interrogating my choices right now? And then a response to that could be like, well, I felt like it.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've just created an
Tense
environment of
situation,
tense
yeah.
and hostility. So what is, and actually it comes from the child psychology space as well. When you ask a child or a teenager, why this, why that, doesn't go down so well.
Yeah.
When you ask them what, you force them to think about their choices and their
Yeah.
actions and their thinking.
That's so good.
So we use the same principle with adults. What made you think that? What made you do that? And it can reveal so much because let's say that you're having a stressful day. We know that when you're experiencing stress or a negative emotion, it can literally dampen the parts of your brain responsible for empathy. Not only that, when you're in that state, you can often interpret a neutral face as negative.
Wow.
So you might have someone in your life who is not trying to be condescending or rude. They say something like they normally would, and you might snap back at them. Anyone who is married probably knows this quite well. I know I do it with my husband all the time. It's because of what's going on in our brain. And we will often default to a why.
Yeah.
But when you allow yourself to ask the question of what made you say that? What was your thinking? It allows the other person to share.
Yeah.
And sometimes you realize it was all in your head. So here's an example someone shared with me recently. Her husband asked her to pick up some milk on the way home from work. And she had a really, really busy day at work.
Yeah.
She forgot about the milk. And she was just in a frazzled state. Now, as she was on the train home, because the shops were at her work, she was on the train. She got a phone call from her husband. She's like, oh my gosh, I forgot the milk. She answers the call and he says, hey, honey, did you get the milk? She snaps at him. You can't expect me to I've had a bad day. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was just at the shops now and I wanted to ask if I should pick up some on my way home.
Yeah.
And so that kind of response is very instinctual,
Yeah.
very reactive.
Yeah.
But when we take a step back and go, what makes you ask? Did you pick up the milk? I didn't. What makes you ask? Oh, I'm at the shops now. I can get some. Great. It just creates a bit of buffer.
Yeah. I love that. That's super interesting. What if you're trying to set boundaries? So let's say with your boss, they ask you to do something, for instance, and you want to say no. How would you go about that?
This is a really good question. So boundaries and bosses are tricky. They're tricky because of the hierarchies of the world of work.
Yeah.
Your boss is responsible for performance reviews, for feedback, a lot of the time for your future in that company. If that boss is liked and has a good personal brand. And so it's very, very tricky and you need to tread lightly.
Yeah.
But let's say, okay, so this is what I always encourage people to do. Be honest about your workload because generally the boundary setting will be associated with I am at capacity. I cannot take on anything else unless they want me to come on weekends, but I don't have time and I'm not paid for weekends. So what do? There was a study that was published in Harvard Business Review in 2021 by Murty and colleagues. And they were looking at Fortune 500 companies. And they found that 60% of managers either did not know or could not remember what their teams did.
Oh my God.
60%.
Wow.
Because the manager is also very busy and has their own workload and has the people they're trying to, the relationships they're trying to navigate as well. They forget what you have on your plate.
Yeah.
So if you're not proactively reminding them about your capacity, they're going to just keep giving you things. And if you're the kind of person who just keeps getting them done, like I used to be, and would go on weekends and stay late when I was a junior employee, then what happened? I just kept getting given more because they're like, Shadé's great. She's fast. She's efficient. Give it to her. She'll get it done.
Oh my God.
I had no life. So you want to communicate it, but how do you communicate it? You don't just say, no, I can't take that. I'm at capacity. You would say, sure, happy to take that on. My current priorities are X, Y, Z, and I've been focusing on X because the deadline is this date. What would you like me to deprioritize so I can make room for that one? Right?
That's so good.
Completely, you're letting them make the decision.
Yeah.
And sometimes what happens is they go, oh, no, actually, they're urgent. You do it. I'll give it to so-and-so. Best case scenario.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, is you've also increased visibility with them. Now they know what you're working on.
Yeah.
And if you can get into a habit of actually increasing visibility, whenever anyone has a one-on-one, a performance review, I always encourage them to run through everything they're working on, the progress, what they've delivered, and make that part of the routine. Now keep also what we call an achievement portfolio, which is an Excel document, Google Sheet, whatever it is, where you track everything you deliver, but not just the deliverable. What was I working on? What skills did I develop or apply? When did I deliver it? What was the outcome? And then, any other questions I might have about that. You keep it. Every time you have a one-on-one, you either share it with them beforehand via email or you show them. Here's where we're up to. We're in this week. This is what I'm working on. Last week I did this. That was great. I learned that. Here's the successes. This week is this. Keeps things front of mind for them.
Amazing. That's super interesting. And is there a way to increase your credibility at work?
So much of credibility comes down, there's two elements. One of them is competence. You want to actually be competent at what you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're faking it, and I don't support faking it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if you are competent, there are certain habits that you might fall into that undermine your credibility without you even being aware of it. And so I'll share a few of them. The first one is when we're interacting with someone, before we say a word, there's a judgment being made about what? Physical appearance. And there's a lot of discussion about dress for yourself, be authentic, let your colors shine. Yes and no. When I was doing my MBA many years back, I remember one of our professors of leadership. She was saying that she used to work in finance. I think it was insurance, corporate insurance, something. And when she was starting out, she needed to, so it was a highly male-dominated industry. I think she was the only female on her floor. Wow. And she said, if I dressed how I wanted to dress, no one would take me seriously. I needed to dress how I was expected to dress so that I didn't stand out for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And that's really important for people to be aware of. I used to work in banking, and there was someone who worked there who was the sweetest person. Really, really enjoyed this person's energy, their attitude, and they would dress authentically. Colorful earrings, giant outfit, and it would make you happy to see it.
Yeah.
But this was a banking environment, and so she stood out. Now, I didn't think anything of it until I was in a meeting with senior executives because I was in a strategy role and I was often with them. And one of them made an offhand comment about how you can't not notice so-and-so, but it wasn't a positive. And so her appearance was undermining her performance because no one remembered what she was doing.
Yeah.
They just remembered how she was looking.
Yeah.
So first step first, dress for your environment, dress for your audience.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean down the track you can't bring in some authentic flair.
Yeah.
But people have their own mindsets and their own unconscious bias, and until we change that, we have to work with it.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The next thing is what else are they paying attention to? It's also physical. It's your posture.
Yeah.
How you stand. Don't slouch. Don't put your hands behind your back. Don't cross your arms. Let your hands be visible. Shoulder upright. Posture right. Neck lifted. Eyes, the gaze up. Don't look at the ground too much. That's important. Third is going to be what you say. Or even before what you say, it's your tone. Your tone matters. Something a lot of people do when they're nervous or in an environment where they feel like they're a little insecure is they use uptalk, where everything they say ends in a little bit of an upward inflection. Hi, and Vanessa Van Edwards, she's a friend of mine and phenomenal at what she does, behavioral investigator, founder of Science of People, best-selling author. She talks about this a lot, how when people are introducing themselves, hi, I'm Shadé Zarai. I'm really excited to be at this meeting. Thank you for inviting me.
It's like a question.
Constant questions. There's no confidence in that. And if you don't have confidence in what you're saying, other people are not going to have confidence in you. So be aware of your tone. Try and end things, unless it's a question, end on a slight downward. It just exudes a little bit more charisma and credibility.
Yeah.
The third thing is then what you say. There are certain words that we might be using, like, actually, these fillers, which are not helpful.
Yeah.
When I was in grade 3, our teacher, Mrs. Wenning, she got us to stand up one by one at the front of the room, and there was a bin. So we had these tin bins, big ones that were green. She'd turn it upside down, and it would be behind us. And we had to just speak about anything, about our weekend, about a favorite TV show we had. And if we used the word or ah, she would hit the bin with a cricket bat. So it was like really jarring, a little bit traumatic, but she was training us not to use the filler words. And it was really valuable.
Yeah.
Assuming we got over the trauma of the loud noises. I do have issues with loud noises today. Maybe it was because of that. Who knows? But, filler words we use because it's comfort, it's habit, or it's just completely we feel like it's out of our control because our mind has gone further ahead than our mouth, or rather our mouth has gone further ahead than our mind.
Yeah.
So if you're using fillers, slow down. Also, what I found really helpful, replace a filler word with a breath. And there's a really great exercise, actually. I'm going to share it with you because I have a cup right here. So we tend to rush when we're nervous, and it undermines our credibility. I remember I had a coaching client very early on, and she had a very thick accent. So English was not her native language. She had a very thick accent. She was so highly competent, yet people were not listening to her. And I asked her to share with me what she might share in a meeting. And she shared and 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 shared. It was about 2 minutes of just nonstop sharing. There were no gaps. There were no pauses. And she was speaking really fast.
Yeah.
So I got her to do this exercise. It's called the SIP technique. So what you do is you grab a piece of paper or grab something that has words on it, a newspaper, a novel, and you want to read it. Now, every time there is a punctuation mark, you stop and you take a sip. And it just trains you to be okay with silence.
Yeah.
And then you do it again, do it for about a minute. Now, once you've done that, you put the book away, and then you practice you introducing yourself. Hi, I'm Shadé Zarai. Thanks so much for inviting me for this opportunity to be on this podcast today. Right now, the idea is that you're just training yourself to be okay with a pause. I wouldn't recommend like a pause that long, because it would be like, hi, I'm Shadé Zarai. Thank you. It's got to be natural.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to train yourself with an extended version of something until you start to feel more comfortable with it, and then it becomes natural.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. Now, I do want to quickly move into some certain language patterns that I think everyone has heard, but it's worthwhile sharing again. Don't preface what you're going to say by undercutting yourself. This might be a silly idea. I haven't really thought this through. I'm not really sure about this one. Don't say it. Just remove it. That said, I do think if you are competent and confident and you're a leader and you don't need to worry about how you're perceived, totally fine. Do whatever you want. This is only if you're in a position where you feel like you are not getting the competence, the perception of competence from other people and credibility. So scrap that, drop the prefaces, the softeners. We do it because we want to, there's two reasons, I think. The first one is that we're softening the impact of something so that in case we share something that someone doesn't agree with, we've kind of softened it.
Yeah.
The second reason we do it is we're giving ourselves an out if it was a silly idea. Both of these reasons are bad. We should not be doing it at all.
Yeah. You're not owning it.
Exactly. Just own it. Just share it. The second one would be the use of just, sort of, actually, just any term that we will repeat, remove them. And it's important to be aware of what we write in email as well as verbal. So when you write an email, you have more of a time to read through it again and just remove any of these words that are not going to help your credibility. One other thing I will share, which comes from the research, is we can dramatically influence how flexible we appear to other people based on the language that we use.
Yeah.
I'm not free at 2 p.m. for a meeting, as opposed to I'm free anytime after 3. You see? So someone says, oh, can I meet you at 2 p.m.? I'm not free at 2 p.m. You've just come across as if you are inflexible, not super open. I'm open anytime after 3. Saying the same thing, giving a little bit more information, and you're positioning yourself as someone who is much more open, conducive to trying to make things work. So that's another one for credibility that we often forget about.
So those were amazing. And some people are really high on competence and credible and courageous and all these things, but they're very low on likability and warmth. What can someone do to be more likable in a workplace environment?
What I encourage people to do is think about people they like. Who do you like at work? And what is it that they do? And how can you emulate more of that? Because it will look a little bit different for everybody. And I think when it comes to likability and warmth, it needs to be sincere. Otherwise, it just comes off as tacky and trying too hard. I think what can be really helpful is to firstly remind yourself that you really like the people that you work with. I know that's an odd thing to say, but we tend to like people more when we feel like they like us. And when you like someone, you tend to express behaviors and, you know, vocal tones that reflect that you like these people. So that can be helpful. Like, I really like this person. How can I mirror that in my body language and how I speak? A big piece of it will be recognizing as well that all of us have a different... Okay, so we know of love languages. I think a lot of us are aware of love languages. This refers to how you like to receive love from your significant other. And there's physical touch, there's words of affirmation. I won't go into that. But there is an equivalent at work. It's like, how do people like to be liked or like to be approached? Some people at work will like to have the 5-minute chat before a meeting. And that's one way to increase your likability. Ask them, how is your weekend? How is your kid? How is your grandfather's 70th birthday? Which also means that you need to be paying attention and keeping note. Okay, so I'm going to share one of the best techniques that I ever learned. And I only learned it because I needed a way. My memory was not very good when I was starting my career. And I would use starting my career as an opportunity to meet people. Hey, I've just joined the company. I'd love to meet with you, treat you to a coffee, and just ask you about life and your role. And believe it or not, most people said yes.
Amazing.
So I'm meeting all these people and they're telling me about their jobs and their careers and then their kids and their weekends. And at the end of the meeting, I would keep an Excel document and I would write, who did I meet? Where did I meet them? Because I often forget who the person was unless I knew where it was. And then, what did they share? Do they have any kids? Any dates they shared? Anything coming up? And then also, what's my follow-up? A lot of them would share. I'd ask them, like, what are you looking forward to professionally in the next year? And what are you looking forward to personally? So I knew that, this guy's moving into a new house in 3 months. I'm going to send him an email. And just say, hope the move went well. No need to reply. Do you know how much that means to people when they know you've been listening and paying attention? And then you proactively reach out, not because you want anything out of them. No need to reply. Just checking in.
That's brilliant.
Simple. But it doesn't work for everybody. And that's why I shared earlier, you need to know what people like. Some people will like that. Other people might find it very creepy. So you need to judge and use your wisdom and discretion to determine when it's appropriate. For someone else, what they might really appreciate is that if you're going to make yourself a tea, you say, hey, do you want me to make you a tea? Great. And that's all they need. So it's again, we're so multifaceted as humans. We need to determine what is this person's likability language, and then how can I deliver that for them?
I love that you're applying love languages to the workplace. I never thought about it like that, but that's brilliant. And my next question would be, if, for instance, someone feels overlooked at work, and we talked about this, before, but for instance, there's these situations where maybe you make a suggestion and everyone overlooks it, like no one seems to hear you, and then your colleague makes the same suggestion and everyone loves it. So what do you do?
What do you do in the situations when someone steals credit for your work or makes the same suggestion that you just said? I think this has happened to a lot of people. And that feeling that we get when it happens is the worst. It's like, I just said that and you can't really do anything in that moment.
Yeah.
Really tricky. So there's two pieces. I want to address the first one, which is when someone says what you said and they get all the acknowledgement and you got none. The first thing to do is to introspect. Was there anything that they said differently, framed differently? Did they present it in a different way? Did they have more confidence when they shared it? Because how you say something is often more important than what you say. And if you're sharing an idea, you need to be excited about your idea or no one else will be excited about your idea. So sometimes, unfortunately, it's just that that person has a louder voice. They present in a more engaging way. Sometimes it's timing. You shared it when the last point was just getting wrapped up and people weren't in the same headspace. And then that person shared it when it was time for open discussion and people were aware of it. So you can choose if you want to. If it's like a really important idea that you want people to acknowledge that, hey, I also had that idea. You can say, Stephen, that's exactly what I had in mind and I tried to share, but you said it so much more eloquently than I did. Right? So you just need to make sure you're not undercutting yourself or lowering your credibility. But if you can say it in a lighthearted way, that's exactly what I was trying to communicate. I'm so glad you said it in a way that I didn't. I need to learn from you. You know, you can add some humor to it. So that's one thing. But also do pay attention. How am I speaking? Am I using the uptalk? You know, I have an idea. Maybe it would work. I have an idea. I think it would work. So much of it comes down to that. The second piece is what happens if you're in a meeting and someone else takes credit for your work. This is not a good experience to be in. Again, many of us know what it feels like. It is horrible. What do we do? I like to have a very pragmatic view. You need to assess in yourself what battles are worth fighting. What does that mean? Is it worth you going through the effort of raising and the discomfort? Or is it like, whatever, like they can have it? Sometimes it's like, you know, it's fine. I'm going to let them take this one. But other times, especially if it's repeated, you need to address it. And so 2 things I would recommend. The first one is to actually chat with the person afterwards. The first time it happens, chat with them and say, hey, I noticed in the meeting you said that you worked on X. I was also involved in that. I was just curious if that was your intention to take full credit for that. Ask them. Don't say you took full credit for that. Ask them to share with you what's going on. Sometimes they go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I forgot about you.
You give them the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. What happens if it's your manager? Even more tricky. More important to give them the benefit of the doubt. Hey, I noticed in that meeting you took credit for this. Was that your intention? They might say yes, they might say no. But you can ask them, say, would it be possible in future to also mention that I helped? Because I'd love to get that kind of visibility, you know, to show that I'm a real team player and I'm collaborative. And that's good because you're not making it about you, you're making it about qualities, team player, collaborative. And then unfortunately, whatever the manager decides, the manager decides. But if you have other stakeholders or mentors or people that you know in other areas, there might be other ways to get visibility. We won't go into that, just in the interest of time. But what happens if it is just a coworker and it happens again? So you've spoken to them and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll make sure you get credit. And then the next meeting, same thing happens. If you have the courage within you and you can manage your tone, because it's going to be really important that you don't allow a defensive, reactive tone to come out, you can say, what Stephen, or rather, okay, let me just think through. What would be a good approach? So I have a video from a very long time ago. And in the video, what I suggested to say is something like this. What Stephen was trying to say is that we collaborated on the client research. He put together the report and then I put together the presentation. Right? Now, on second thoughts, I think that's a little bit direct because that's not what Stephen was trying to say. He was trying to take full credit. So what I would probably say now is jump in and say, it was so wonderful to work with Stephen on this project. He did this, I did that, and we're really happy that it's coming to fruition. So you're not putting words in anyone's mouth. You're jumping in and saying, it was great to have an opportunity to work on this with him. Here's what we did. And when you do that, look at the important people in the room. And then that way, Stephen doesn't have to feel like you're pointing him out. You're just making everyone aware, hey, I was involved in this too.
Amazing. I love that. Shadé, thank you so much today's conversation. It was super valuable, and I hope everyone found it as interesting as I did. And
I hope so too.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, and congrats on the new book. I'll link in the description below as well, where people can get it.
Thanks.
And I hope to have you here soon.
I hope so. It's been so wonderful. And I also just wanted to mention with the book, so it's actually not published till January, but we are offering a special deal right now. If you pre-order it, you get access to a live monthly masterclass with me every single month up until publication. You also get the replays, so that's going to be, they're 90 minutes each, so it's going to be something like 8 or something hours by the end of it.
Amazing.
There's a community, there are resources. So that's just for people, if they want to invest in themselves now, they get access to all these wonderful bonuses. And then when the book is out, hopefully it has the impact I want it to have.
I'm sure it will. And perfect. I'll link everything in the
Amazing. Thank you.
So
and
much.
I just want to also acknowledge, well done to you for everything that you do.
Oh, thank you.
Because you truly embody everything that you're encouraging others to embody, and the consistency that you've demonstrated with this. So for everyone tuning in, I think we need to also acknowledge that Francesca's the one here constantly delivering value. So thank you to you. And thanks for the opportunity.
That's so sweet. Thank you.